We are live. I am Lucas Wencl, joined by Dave Kluge of Footballguys. Dave, it's a pleasure to have you on tonight. You have been tearing up the best ball streets weekly for Footballguys as well. You've had some super fun guests on. So appreciate you taking the time to hop on here. Before we dive in, where can the people find you? Where can the people come view your best ball streams and all Footballguys content?
Real simple. You can find all my stuff these days over at footballguys.com, rankings, articles, shows, all that good stuff. I've got the Footballguys Fantasy Football Show that I'm doing with Alfredo Brown. We're up to 3 days a week right now, plus a best ball live stream on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern. We're going to be ramping up that show volume in just a couple of weeks here. I've got some articles that I'm working on that are going to be coming out at footballguys.com as well. But the easiest way is just to follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. You can see all the content that I'm sharing there when I am doing digs on articles and for shows and stuff like that. I kind of share some fun stats and metrics as I come across them, and then all my content can be found there on Twitter at Dave Kluge.
And if you need a good laugh, a good little sarcastic tweet stat as well from Dave, that's always a good pick me up. If you need a little, if you think people are taking fantasy football just a bit too seriously on any given day, Dave is the number one person who will add some lightness and humor to that as well.
And I got to say, humor is hard on Twitter. I mean, I can't believe how many jokes I put out there that are just dripping with sarcasm, and people take them dead serious. Like the other day, what did I tweet out? I was like, I'm looking for undersized, unathletic running backs who did nothing in their rookie season to find this year's Kyren Williams.
Yeah.
And everybody took it earnestly. Like there were 18 comments and every single person thought that I was being serious. It's
Kendra Miller. Right.
Yeah. It's tough in these streets. Eric Gray was the common response that we got there. But yeah, like the joke I'm making is Kyren Williams is an outlier. Like we don't see this happen. And yeah. I try my best. I'm not going to stop.
I send those immediately because I love looking at the replies and people just blow up. I'm like, really? We're taking this seriously? Exactly. The point you're making is Kyren Williams is one of one. It's not easy to predict who the Kyrens and the Pukas are, but that's also why we do best ball drafts this early in the offseason where guys like Kyren and Puka were going 17th, 18th round, even undrafted at this point last year. So when you're competing for millions of dollars, now is the time to draft these guys to get an edge on your competition. So we're going to dive into a best ball mania 5 draft here. A few people in the chat here. Chicken Wing Prod, what's good? Aiden, Nick, thanks for popping in, man. Appreciate you all hanging out here with us tonight. We're going to dive in. If you want to draft with us over on Underdog Fantasy, code fellas, you will get a first deposit match up to $250. They'll give you a free square to their pick'em lobby as well. And hey, we'll even we'll send you our draft guide for free as well. So we're gonna hop in Best Ball Mania 5. If you want to jump in with us, we got 5 more spots left, 4 more spots left. These drafts are going to fill up quick here. Where have you been drafting from most frequently this year, Dave? I know it's totally random, but I feel like I've been stuck at the turn so often. And it's infuriating because I hate the turn. Nobody likes the turn.
You know, I've already got 300 drafts under my belt, so I've been drafting from mostly the same spot. You know, it gets spread out a little bit, but I actually looked at our underdog exposure tool over on Footballguys the other day, and my most common spot has been the 4 spot. Again, totally random. It's like 9.8% of my drafts have been from the 4 spot. But because of that, the guy that I have the most exposure on right now is Ja'Marr Chase, which is a nice guy to have heavy exposure to. Just behind that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's one of the few stances that I have in round 1 is taking Amon-Ra ahead of Justin Jefferson. And then the other one is I was taking A.J. Brown ahead of Puka Nacua before those ADPs flip-flop. So been drafting from 4 more often than not. But the 3 guys that I have the most exposure to in round 1 so far, Ja'Marr Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown, and feeling pretty good about all 3 of those.
How much of your strategy drafting A.J. Brown too has been where Jalen Hurts' value is at the same time? Because what I have started doing is, look at this, we're going to draft at the turn again, aren't we? I just had to open my big mouth. Look at that, right on the turn as well. Oh boy, here's let's get on our hands and knees and pray for a little Jahmyr Gibbs, Garrett Wilson to survive around. That's the only way I enjoyed the turn.
I've also liked the Puka Marvin Harrison when that falls that way, which has happened like the last 3 times I've drafted from the 12th spot. And of course, you're getting that week 17 correlation, which is always nice. But those are also guys that have very wide ranges of outcomes. Last year we talked so much, the data always says that drafting earlier is better. And of course, that is the case. But the best teams I drafted last year, and I think the best spot you could have built a team from was at the end when you were able to start with CeeDee Lamb in round 1 and then get him on Brown in week 2 or in round 2. You know, those guys had the week 17 correlation last year. It felt chalky to do it, but it ended up being a great way to start your drafts. It is chalky as the Puka Harrison start feels this year. I can't help but feel like it's going to be pretty similar.
And by the time Marvin Harrison gets broken into the NFL as well, I mean, that is going to be a dynamic NFC West shootout in week 18 or week 17, excuse me, as well. Yeah, Nick, not a fan of the turn. Agree. Nick's popped in on a few streams where we've been drafting at the 10-11 pretty frequently. Wow, I'm on Raw with the second overall pick here. That feels a little. I know you said you just like Amon Ra, but
yeah. I mean, I like to keep it kind of flat in round 1. I don't like reaching more than a pick or two for my guys, but you know, I've made the argument time and time again that I think like the top 5 this year is where you want to be picking from, because whether it's Christian McCaffrey, Amon-Ra, CD, Tyreek, or Jamar Chase, I feel like it's just so flat there. And you know, I'm picking pretty tight to ADP just because of the volume of drafts that I'm doing. But if you're just throwing like 1 or 2 darts here and you're not trying to max enter or anything like that, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those guys as early as 101. Like if you want to take a Amon-Ra ahead of Christian McCaffrey, I'm not going to recommend it, but I'm also not going to judge you for doing it.
If you're trying to be different in a contest of thousands upon thousands of entries, that is one way to be different in this kind of a contest. I do see friend of ours, Kevin Ho, 123. I believe he's a friend of the show. He's in here. I want to go back to AJ Brown because I think we talk about these wide receivers a lot, yet at the top of the board right now is Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall. When do you dictate taking a guy like AJ Brown ahead of those two, or when do you start mixing in a Bijan, Breece Hall, you know, even potentially ahead of a Jamar, a Jefferson, or an Amon Ra, who typically goes at this point? Or are you pretty much just like, give me the wide receivers? The running backs in this kind of a formats are not always an advantage to draft right away in the first round.
Like I said, you know, max entering this contest, I'm sticking pretty close to ADP. I want to be exposed to all of these guys just because, you know, if I plant a flag that I want AJ Brown ahead of the running backs and then AJ Brown comes out week 1, tears his ACL, season is over, I've basically lit a third of my entries on fire, and that's not a position I want to be in. So my rankings, like my fantasy football rankings, I have AJ Brown ahead of Justin Jefferson. I have him ahead of Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. But you have to play ADP to some extent in a big tournament like this. So I'm still just waiting for him when he falls to me at 9. We're on the board right now.
Yep.
Puka is off. So I guess we'll go Jahmyr Gibbs here.
Yep.
I like
second
Jahmyr
pick
Gibbs.
Then.
And then, you know, I'm thinking for the second pick, it's a little bit of a reach, but I like Nico Collins here. I think that he stays. We can go with Nico or Deebo. I'm happy with either of them. Deebo does give us that week 17 correlation. I'm fine with either of those guys. Do you have a strong stance here?
In a position where we can stack week 17 right away, I'm all for doing that at the turn. I'm really trying to differentiate my turns because, again, we have
you just take off an ADP, picks. You're going to have the same builds as everybody else.
100%. Right. So I've started getting crafty where, like, I don't love Davante Adams this year, but I've just gone Davante Adams, Chris Olave on the turn in a handful of these drafts just to get that 17 correlation right away, just to be a little bit different. Again, going by ADP at the turn, you're going to be drafting basically almost the exact same team every single time. So I'm good mixing in some Deebo Samuel there, mostly because we're in this range of second round players where everybody at ADP, except for maybe Jonathan Taylor, is like, well, there's a case where I burned my second round pick on fire, right? Who's your favorite pick in the second round? Because I feel like there's an anti-take on everybody out there. There's an anti-take on Olave, an anti-take on Saquon, an anti-take on Mike Evans as he goes off the board. And, you know, there's anti-takes on everybody out here. At some point, we have to take a stance on one of these guys. Who's the one that you're taking your stance on?
Nico Collins is a guy that I've been reaching for. Big believer in CJ Stroud, what he did his rookie season. Nico Collins is a guy that I've been clamoring for years. Just one of my favorite wide receivers. We finally saw the breakout last year, second in the league in yards per route run. And I know there's some concern there about, you know, how Stephon Diggs can impact this or what Tank Dell can do, taking a step forward in year 2. But he's just such a good receiver. And I want to, you know, I just want to invest into that Texans offense. So I'm okay going with Nico Collins there. But, you know, you talk about the back half of round one not being as good as the front half of round one. And I completely agree with that. But I think the other disadvantage that you have when you're drafting at the back half of round one is that you look at everybody in round two and it's pretty flat. Like I don't see a huge difference between Marvin Harrison, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, Mike Evans, and the guys going at the end of round two, where you're getting Jalen Waddle, or you're maybe getting Nico Collins when he slides down there. So I think that's probably even a bigger disadvantage. Not only are you losing out on the premier guys in round one, but it doesn't feel like you're getting any advantage drafting at the top of round two as opposed to the end of round two.
Especially when you that's what's so difficult, because now we're gonna come all the way back around here too, and we're still gonna be looking at the board like, man, most of the upper end wide receiver twos that we would want are gone.
And then the back half of round three is terrible as opposed to the top half of round three. So that's why, like, when you're picking it where we are at 12, it's really tough to get a unique build. It's tough to get a good build because we're going to see there's still other guys, DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore. They're going to be going off the board in these next few picks. And then we're going to be sitting at the end of round three saying, do we reach for Sam Laporta or Josh Allen to get one of these onesie positions? You start getting a guy like Tank Dell that you're forcing into the lineup, or Zay Flowers that you don't feel great about with a round three pick, but it's just it's a tough spot to be in.
Well, and especially now, like we see Brandon Aiyuk go off the board end of round two, when he was a guy who was going at the turn very frequently. I mean, he was a common one where you would see Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 10, and then Brandon Aiyuk go pick 15 on the turnaround here. Oh, give me your 30-second take on Aiyuk. Is he a 49er this year? Is he going to get traded? Because I mean, we just took Deebo with relative confidence that he's definitely going to be in San Francisco this year. Is the sliding ADP warranted for Aiyuk? Give me your take on that.
No, I almost would have taken Aiyuk at 13. I mean, I don't have any real difference between Aiyuk and Deebo in my rankings. I give a slight edge to Deebo because he has the big playability and the usage, gives him some really nice spike weeks there. But yeah, I think Brandon Aiyuk's still going to be a 49er this year. I think the thing with Deebo that a lot of people aren't talking about is, Christian McCaffrey has been healthy for the last couple of years. But if Christian McCaffrey goes out, then we see the upside unlocked for Deebo Samuel, where he goes into that same role we saw in 2021, where he was the wide receiver 2 behind only Cooper Kupp, when he starts getting goal line carries and more end arounds and carries out of the backfield while still playing his receiver role. So that's the slight tiebreaker for me. I think in a vacuum, Brandon Aiyuk is a better receiver. He's going to draw more targets overall, but I think the potential contingent upside with Deebo Samuel in the event of an injury to Christian McCaffrey makes him the more alluring guy in a tournament like this.
Nothing to add. Are you double tapping wide receiver at the turn here if we get a combination of any of these top 3-4 wide receivers come back to us? Which way are you leaning at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'd even go as deep as Amari Cooper, who just went off the board, unfortunately. But yeah, you scroll back up a little bit. Yeah, DJ Moore, Tank Dell would be preferred here. DJ Moore is a guy who has proven that he is quarterback proof, and now there's concerns about, the added target competition, rookie quarterback, all those sorts of things. I'm not all that concerned. I mean, this guy was balling out regardless of who he played with in Carolina, went for 1,400 yards last year. So we're going to get him. DJ Moore, feel pretty good about that. Not really crazy about the other wide receivers here, but I think that going for Laporta or Kelsey is a little bit of a stretch, knowing the tight ends you can get later. So again, we're just going to kind of stick with ADP here, not doing anything crazy. We'll go with Zay Flowers. Of course, if you take Zay Flowers, there's almost no chance that you're getting Lamar Jackson. He typically goes with 4 or 5 turns, so we need him to really, really slide here. But he's probably going to be the wide receiver 1 there. Opens us up to, maybe getting Dalton Schultz, a tight end later, if we miss out on one of these elite guys. So I'm okay with that pick, but don't feel great about it. But we kind of need to get these wide receivers early.
Yeah, that again, this is just the disadvantage of drafting so far down the turn is you gotta have your take ready on some of these guys. Even though you might not love Zay Flowers, you're kind of sucked into taking him here, because if you wait another full round afterwards, I mean, you're going to be looking at the wide receiver 35 at that point in ADP.
And you're looking at Jaden Reed, hoping that you can get starter weeks out of him. It gets really bleak really fast.
So you're a Chicago fan, correct? Still, I mean, you got the helmet in the background, not to be confused with the Lamar Jackson jersey to the left of you, as Jesse pointed out here. Give me your outlook here for the Bears wide receiver room, and especially as we're going to start creeping into the range of Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen as well here in these drafts. How do you feel like this wide receiver room is going to shake out with Shane Waldron now at the helm? Obviously, the whole dilemma with how we utilized JSN last year. They just spent the 9th overall pick on Rome Odunze. I feel like they're an interesting wide receiver room to fit to what's the word I'm looking for? To
project,
project. Thank you. I'm like, it is
Yeah.
literally on the tip of my tongue. I cannot spit it out. To project in fantasy this year. I think DJ Moore is the clear one, but where do you fall on like a Keenan Allen versus Rome Odunze?
And that's pretty much it for me. I mean, I'm sprinkling in a little bit of Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze here and there, but there's only one player that I'm overweight on in Chicago this year, and it's DJ Moore. I mean, like I said, this guy showed us that he was quarterback proof during his time in Carolina. Went for 1,479 yards last year. He was 10th in the league in target share. Ran a route on 100% of Chicago's offensive snaps last year. He was getting deep targets. He was getting screens. He was doing things after the catch. He's just a bona fide wide receiver one. Now, I think the concern, of course, is that Shane Waldron doesn't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So then you start kind of projecting, what do we expect? Is it going to be Rome Odunze or Keenan Allen playing out of the slot? And then who's going to the bench when they drop down to a 2 wide receiver set? And I don't know. I don't think that you pay Keenan Allen $20 million and make a trade for him just to put him on the bench for half of the snaps. But I also don't think that you draft Rome Odunze. So are we going to see a change in philosophy from Shane Waldron where he starts running some more 3 wide receiver sets? I don't know exactly. And that ambiguity could open up a huge value because maybe Keenan Allen, a guy that we wrote off last year and was dropping it into rounds 4 and 5 and finished as a top 3 wide receiver, maybe he does it again this year, but I don't have enough faith there. You look historically, rookie quarterbacks have always struggled to maintain more than one viable fantasy starter. And I think that one viable fantasy starter is going to be DJ Moore. You're going to get a spike week here and there from Keenan Allen. You'll probably get a spike week here and there from Rome Odunze, but they need to fall pretty far below ADP to pique my interest.
I was listening to guys over at Establish the Run, and they were saying, like, using the 9th overall pick on Rome Odunze might force Shane Waldron into a philosophical change of like, okay, we got to run more 3 wide receiver sets. Part of me is like, or what if he's just stubborn and continues to just throw out 2 wide receiver sets? And we don't know if it's going to be Keenan Allen who comes off the field because he's primarily in the slot, or if it's going to be Rome Odunze because he needs to prove his reps on the field, earn his time on the field, earn his stripes, if you will. Speaking of Keenan Allen, he's top of the board here. We're about five picks away here.
And if he falls, I mean, what we're picking at 60. So I mean,
60,
he falls
61. Yep.
Over half a round below ADP. That's a spot where I would be interested in potentially taking him. And I also really like the Seattle offense this year, what I expect Brian Grubb to do, kind of injecting some optimism here. So I do like that if you do end up with multiple Bears players, that you've got that week 17 run back where you can look at, Zach Charbonnet, one of my most drafted running backs. You can get a guy like Noah Fant, who's a guy that we're pegging as a sleeper tight end for the seemingly 4th or 5th year in a row. But I think there's a lot of options there if you do decide to go all in on Chicago. Jaden Reed's a guy I'm not too interested here. We can start throwing some guys in the queue. Keenan Allen would be atop the queue just because, we'd get a good ADP value here. Kyle Pitts is another guy that I'd be interested in. Doesn't really work with the build that we have right now. Joe Mixon as well. We'll throw him in the queue since we've got Zay Flowers. That opens up that week 17 game. And then Rashid Rice right now is just a great value. I almost
say Rashi.
Yeah, I want to go Rashid Rice ahead. We could drop Kyle Pitts down. Let's go Mixon and Rashid Rice here. As much as I love Kyle Pitts, I think that's the way to go. I'm also looking at George Kittle as another guy that we can add here. We've already got, the Gibbs and Deebo, but I think Rashid Rice and Mixon is the move here.
Yep. I would agree. And the closer we get to the start of the season, the closer I'm convinced this is just going to be Alvin Kamara all over again, where it's like we're fretting a suspension all off season.
Yep.
And it's not going to come until 2025 now, which it seems more and more likely the closer we inch to the NFL season.
When Best Ball Mania first opened, some of the values we were getting on these Chief players were insane. I wouldn't take my first Chiefs player until round 4, and I'd walk out with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Rashid Rice, and Hollywood Brown. Seems like everybody started to get steamed up a little bit now. I still prefer Hollywood to Rashid Rice, but with him typically going, in round 4 now, Rashid Rice is a great fallback option in the 5th.
People are saying you look relaxed and locked in. I mean, this draft is going fairly well so far, considering we're 4 wide receivers deep already. We got Jameer and Joe Mixon.
Put it on my tombstone, relaxed and locked in.
You know what? I hope that's how I can live my life by the time I hit the grave. Man. So at this point in the draft, I'm trying to be better this year about Pete Overzet has been talking about, like, let the first 5-6 rounds come to you. Don't force anything. Don't be trying to force your stacks. And I think in years past, I have definitely been on that boat of, like, I'm going to predict which, based off of the first 2 rounds, my week 17 stacks, this is what I'm building out. That hasn't bode well. So at this point in the draft, we have 2 week 17 stacks. We're looking at a little Baltimore, Houston. We have the San Francisco, Detroit Lions built in as well. When is the point in these drafts when you are starting to look at the week 15, 16, 17 stacks? It's always in the back of your mind, but when are you really starting to focus on building out those stacks to get
usually
that edge?
Usually after I get a quarterback. I don't want to start, buying into week 15 and 16 at this point, because we don't know. I mean, we're not going to get Mahomes, obviously. We're probably not going to get Stroud here because that doesn't really work. It might not be a terrible idea to start looking ahead a little bit, look at the Lions, who they're playing, look at the 49ers and the Bears, who they're playing. But you start building around these week 15 and 16 stacks, and then all of a sudden you get sniped on Jared Goff or sniped on Brock Purdy. I don't know if that's really beneficial. So I usually wait until I get my quarterbacks, and then I'll hit those late 15, 16 run backs in the final rounds.
And those are some of the... There's a lot of easy backdoor stacks this year once you get into the later rounds as well. I think it's a lot of the offenses that people are just projecting so low too that are easy to slide in those week 15, 16 stacks. Like Denver is a super easy one to slide in. The Patriots are a super easy one to slide in. Surprisingly, the Chargers are an easy one as well. If you're gonna pick one of those offenses to kind of backdoor stack, I mean, and even like looking at where the Titans are going right now, I mean, Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, 5th, 6th round, but those are guys where you can wait until the 13th, 14th round to stack a Will Levis. If you're going to choose one of those offenses to kind of surprise everybody in a big contest like this year, which offense are you going to choose?
I'm going to go with the Patriots just because they feel so similar to what we got last year with the Houston Texans, where it was a top 3 quarterback, a bunch of young, unproven wide receivers, and nobody really had any faith in them. And I was tweeting about it last year that, like, if you miss out on your stacks, just throw some darts at CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell at the end of your draft and see what happens. Of course, it doesn't always work out that way. I was also throwing darts at, Jonathan Mingo and Bryce Young, and sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You can't hit on all of them, but I think Drake May is a very good quarterback, and there's so much ambiguity with Demario Davis and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, not really knowing who the guy is going to be as the wide receiver 1. I think that ambiguity has pushed everybody down draft boards, and then all it takes is Drake May to be better than we expect him to be, and all of a sudden you've got a really good late round stack there. And coupled with the fact that you can get the Chargers players for so late as well, that just seems like one of the easiest ones to look for at the end of your draft.
It's so easy because they all go after the 10th round. And, like you said, it doesn't have to be Jalen Polk who keeps getting pushed up the board. It can be Demario Douglas. It can be Javon Baker. It can be Hunter Henry's the tight end 19 right now.
Right. And last year we thought it was like Xavier Hutchinson and Amari Rodgers, and we were in who else? Who was the old guy that was there last year? Oh, Robert Woods was another guy.
Robert Woods
trying to stack in Houston, and we never know who it's going to be, but I think that when you're taking that late round backdoor stack approach, you just kind of throw darts at everybody. And Jalen Polk and Javon Baker and Demario Douglas, any of them could break out, and I'm not going to delude myself into pretending to know who it's going to be.
All right, we're on the clock here. This is a heavy running back range. Where are you leaning here?
Jonathan Brooks doesn't work with our build at all, but he's been my most drafted running back so far. We could talk about him a little bit if you want to throw him in the queue. We could also go with Jamison Williams, who's getting some positive buzz out of camp right now. We've already got Jahmyr Gibbs, so that just helps us kind of continue to build on that stack. Jonathan Brooks is a guy that, like, I am invested in the Panthers this year. I think that they're going to bounce back a little bit with Dave Canales, the improvements they've made to the offensive line, drafting Xavier Legette, bringing in Deontay Johnson. I think they've done some really, really good things this offseason. But Jonathan Brooks is a guy that I just cannot stop drafting. You look at when he got injured, it was almost the same exact time frame as when Todd Gurley got injured prior to his rookie season. Gurley went on to have a slow start to his rookie season, but over the entire year, he finished as a top 12 running back. And over the last 3 weeks of the season, the fantasy football playoffs, he averaged 19.9 points per game. So that's kind of the thesis with Jonathan Brooks, is that, he might start off a little bit slow, but you're kind of drafting him to be that late season hammer that can help you win it.
And I love Jonathan Brooks as a running back 3 in any of my best ball drafts. I'm a little bit more skeptical as a running back 2, because then I feel like I need some of my later round guys to hit early on in the season. That's where I would really want to make sure I shouldn't even say I really try and get a Jerome Ford, because, when Nick Chubb's out here squatting 500 plus pounds, how many months after an ACL injury?
I just want to say that squatting and ACL reconstruction, there's almost no overlap in like using your ACL in a squat. So it's impressive. Don't get me wrong, but I would rather see him decelerate on a field or cut laterally. Sure. I'll get much more excited about that than I will about a static squat.
Got to get the mention from Cooter Doodle in here. Cookies do indeed crumble.
That's the way it crumbles sometimes. Yeah,
that's the way it does. I totally missed that. I think I've said this about Nick Chubb. My take on Nick Chubb this year is to not have a take, because as soon as I do have a take, and it's anti Nick Chubb, well, he's going to go ahead and have an Adrian Peterson-esque season. And as soon as I'm in favor of Nick Chubb and say, you know what, signs are pointing up here. We're starting to see some, again, like you said, little overlap between squatting and an ACL. But as soon as you get that positive buzz and okay, I'm ready to buy back in, I'm fully ready for him to disappoint at what he's getting steamed up draft boards again now after that video. Is he going running back 36 now? I'm going to go check where he's going now, but he got steamed up again. Where is he? He is still 39. He's at now. I mean, he was going 41, 42.
He jumped Jerome Ford. Yeah.
Which was not the case prior to.
I'm okay fading Nick Chubb. If I'm going to be wrong on Nick Chubb, I'm going to be wrong on Nick Chubb. But we're looking at a guy who like doesn't have elite athleticism. He's strong in between the tackles, but he's never had like the breakaway speed that really helps. He's not a pass catcher, which, as we've seen with Adrian Peterson a while back, Breece Hall just last year, that's kind of the out for guys coming off of an ACL to still maintain elite production in fantasy football, is by catching a lot of passes. You're not going to get that with Nick Chubb, 29 years old, multi-ligament injury, same knee that he's injured in the past. He is every red flag. And I get it, there are outliers out there, but I'm not somebody who's typically going to bet on an outlier. So he's a guy that needs to fall pretty much, if like I've already started building out a Brown stack and he falls below ADP, I'll take him, but I will never really take Chubb ahead of ADP.
Despite what you just said, Dave.
We will get Rashid Shaheed now that we know Cooter is in the chat. We'll reach early for Shaheed in this one,
as he just goes off the board at the 9-1. I love Rashid Shaheed this year. I part of me wishes we could have drafted a few more Saints players, because they're an offense that I like. Can I say I sneaky like this year? I'm not trying to hype up Clint Kubiak, and I know they just lost Ryan Ramczyk, right? Like that's obviously devastating. It seems like people are still just kind of stuck in the past of Kamara isn't efficient. Well, I don't care. He's without efficiency. He's still been top 15 in fantasy points per game each of the last 3 years. When we're looking at an offense that was second to last in play action rate, dead last in motion last year, I just think Clint Kubiak, if he's even remotely improves those areas, like I feel like Rashid Shaheed, especially in the 9th round, is a smash.
Oh yeah, I've been taking him quite a bit, and I know we kind of jokingly said it because Cooter is in here, but all jokes aside, he's a great pick. I think that if Chris Olave kind of moves into that X role where he is running a little bit more across the middle of the field, and they put Shaheed in the role that Olave was in last year, we could see explosions with that. With Shaheed in that role. So I absolutely like that one. So we're still 2 picks out here. Yeah. Taking a look ahead, I think Tyler Lockett makes a lot of sense. We've already, with DJ Moore, that helps us out a little bit. Brock Purdy, absolutely. You want to throw him in the queue. I almost prefer Jared Goff over Brock Purdy. I don't know if I'd reach for Brock Purdy here. Scroll down. How much further down is Goff? Do you think we can get him with the? Yeah, I would take Purdy out. We've still got time. We can wait on Goff for a little while. Scroll down, throw Khalil Shakir in as well.
Yep.
I believe, let me double check. I think off the top of my head, Yeah, week 13, so right before the playoffs, San
Yep.
Francisco gets Buffalo, and then
Yep.
in week 15, the Lions play Buffalo. So
Yep.
Shakir, just in a vacuum, is a guy that I really like this year. I'd put him ahead of Brock Purdy.
Yep.
And then if you want to scroll down just a little bit further, I want to see if anybody
Yep.
else jumps out to me here. Brandon Cooks, Dontavian Wicks.
The most popular sleeper in fantasy football history, Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah. There's nobody else that I'm crazy about here. Let's go Blake Corum as well.
I
Throw
love
him in the
that.
queue. I think I might take him ahead of Purdy. I like
Good with me.
Purdy, but the only guy we have right now is Deebo, and I think that
Yeah.
Deebo can have a productive season without Purdy being great. So again, we're kind of looking at some of the earlier weeks here. Week 15, the San Francisco 49ers play the Los Angeles Rams, but really what it comes down to is just Blake Corum's a guy that I've been aggressively drafting this year. It's not that I'm out on Kyren Williams. I think Kyren Williams is perfectly fair where he's going at the end of round 3. I'm drafting Kyren Williams there at about a 9% clip. So just, I think the market is right on Kyren Williams, but I think the market is way wrong on Blake Corum with where he's getting drafted. There's so many potential outs for Blake Corum. And I think that people are just saying, well, like, yeah, he's a valuable handcuff, but it's not just that. I mean, what if Sean McVay does just change his tendencies a little bit and we see a split where the goal line work in a good Rams offense is going to Blake Corum? What if Blake Corum, the bigger back, the younger back, the back with more draft capital, the stronger back, the back with more burst, what if he just outright beats out Kyren Williams? I don't expect it to happen, but it could happen. And then of course there's a contingent upside where if Kyren Williams goes down, you're looking at a guy with top 5 upside. So Corum's a guy that I think should be going 2-3 rounds earlier than he is. Jonathan Brooks and Blake Corum are 2 of my most drafted guys. So figure if I'm going to guest on a show here, we could keep it on brand.
No, you are welcome anytime to keep it on brand on our show. I mean, and honestly, Blake Corum is a guy who I was super underweight on when Best Ball Mania kicked off, and now as the offseason has picked up, I'm like, I got all eyes on Blake Corum in almost every single draft because you're right. All it takes is for Kyren Williams to miss 4 or 5 games again this year. You have got 4 or 5 games of a top 12 running back, basically. And Blake
I don't mean to cut you off. I want to look right here. This guy, Brad, he's the guy who reached aggressively for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's already got Jaden Daniels. Does he have another quarterback, or is that the only quarterback he has so far? Because he's the guy, if Goff makes it past Brad here, we should be good.
Yeah, he's got AR and Jaden Daniels already. Right, so
theoretically,
we should be able to push
here. Yeah, because I mean, we already did at this point. We're hoping that Goff falls a little bit below ADP, but the Amon-Ra St. Brown drafter already has 2 quarterbacks. We saw Jameson Williams slide. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs slide. So what that tells me is that the people picking before us in round 11 here are somewhat out on the Detroit Lions. Of course, the fear here is that around the turn at pick 122, Brad does something crazy and takes Jared Goff as his QB3. But as long as Goff makes it past pick 122, I think we're in business to get him at 132.
Which is such a smart way of looking at this lobby as well, because even it's crazy because even at a turn at the 12 turn like we are, you can be thinking and looking ahead to guys you can push almost 2 full rounds. And I think that's easy to think about from our perspective of, okay, we have Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams already. Nobody wants to take a naked Jared Goff unless if you have Sam Laporta would be the only other stack potentially, but then unless if you're planning on taking Khalif Raymond, in round 18, which is
right.
I don't want to call it a useless stack, but I'll just say it probably won't be the one that wins Best Ball Mania 5.
But I think a lot of times you can look at the board and kind of see, like, you get a feel for how people feel in the draft. And the other day I was doing a draft where I got Bijan Robinson below ADP. Then I got Drake London below ADP. And then I got Kyle Pitts below ADP.
Yep.
And then there I was in round 14, I believe it was, looking at Kirk Cousins. And I said, why would I take Kirk Cousins here? Yeah, I want the stack, but this draft room has told me repeatedly that they are out on the Atlanta Falcons. So Austin Eckler was still sitting on the board there. I got Austin Eckler below ADP as the week 17 run back. And then in the next round, Kirk Cousins dropped to me a round and a half below ADP because I knew that everybody in this draft was out on the Falcons for whatever reason. So I think something similar here where we see that they are kind of out on the Lions. We see the guys that has Amon-Ra St. Brown, the only other guy that should theoretically be interested in Jared Goff, already has 2 quarterbacks. I think hopefully we made the right choice to kick it down the road here. We'll see if Jared Goff slides 3 more picks.
And if I am correct that Kevin is exactly who I'm okay, good. I was gonna say Kevin is a friend of Cameron.
Oh my God. You got to be kidding me. All right, go to the draft board. Let's see who we got available. Oh my goodness.
Want to speak some Joshua Palmer potentially?
I mean, we've still got Caleb Williams. What's his ADP?
We do.
Has he gone off the board yet?
Yeah, Caleb Williams is already gone. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and throw I don't want to do Justin Herbert. Zach Charbonnet, throw him in the queue while we talk through this.
Yep.
Scroll down a little bit. Are there any other quarterbacks that work with
absolutely brutal?
I mean, that's a tough one.
We got a while till Kirk, till Stafford, till.
All right, let's go throw Herbert in, and we'll start looking at some Patriots and Chargers players as well. That one stings because we had already built out. We had Khalil Shakir for week 15. We had DJ Moore for week 16. We had Deebo Samuel for week 17. That one hurts.
Thanks for tuning into the live stream. No, that's how I feel every single time when it's like it's going to work to perfection. We strategize this perfectly, and here we go. Let's see, there it is. There's the Sam Laporta drafter. That was my one fear. That was my one fear, and wouldn't you know, he does not a naked Jared Goff. I expected it to be, but.
Well, good for him.
That's where we got screwed.
At least he got his stack. Good for him. Real happy for you.
Yeah, I hope Hago's Blue has a great Wednesday evening, great hump day evening, because mine's ruined now. At least somebody should have a good
now,
one.
I mean, at this point, McConkey's off the board, Palmer's off the board, Edwards is off the board. We're looking at Quentin Johnston.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Love the hype coming out of camp on Quentin Johnston.
Uh-huh.
Oh, my goodness. I mean... Yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's Will Dissly. It's who else did they bring in this? Hayden Hurst is a Charger now.
J.K. Dobbins, DJ Chark, DJ Vidal.
Oh man.
Yeah. But if there's one team that is getting suppressed in value that we could expect to be good, I mean, Justin Herbert thrown for 4,000 yards every single year he's been in the league. If I'm going to fall back on a late stack that I'm trying to get here, it's not the worst. And let's just say some crazy world where Jared Goff gets injured and all of a sudden the backup has to come in and we have a unique build. Let's try to look positively here. Maybe Hendon Hooker can be the guy to lead the Lions to the promised land this year.
Is that around 18 Hendon Hooker that I'm
hearing? I don't think so. I think we're okay just leaving it unstacked at this point. But yeah, that one certainly does
stings. Oh, that stings so bad. Oh boy, and yeah, as I'm looking at the other Patriots as well, I mean, both Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas off the board. We're looking for that stack as well.
Hunter Henry, Antonio Gibson, and Javon Baker. That's where we'll be looking. But we've also got week 15. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we could always throw in a late Trey Palmer there, perhaps. Denver Broncos. I'm sure Javante's already gone off the board, but we got Jaleel McLaughlin. Audrey Estime is getting some buzz out of camp as well. Troy Franklin. There's still other things we can do here. It's not the way we envision this going, but we're still drafting it.
Takes me around to recover. This is one where I'm glad I'm on the turn because I at least have 2 full rounds to basically recuperate and recover. If I'm drafted in the middle, I'm freaking out in my next pick. Oh my gosh, okay, get over yourself. We gotta lock in here for the rest of the draft.
Just the way it goes sometimes. So how many we're in round 13? So we still have 5 picks left here. Even without the quarterback stacks, though, we still do have a lot built out for weeks 15, 16, and 17. Even if we don't have the quarterback stacks, we've got the run backs, we've got a lot of game stacks. It stings, but I wouldn't say that this is a dead roster by any means.
No, not at all. But I mean, as we mentioned earlier, cookies do crumble, so that do be the way the cookie crumble, not to tie it all together.
Smith
here.
We can fall back on, which isn't the prettiest, but a Geno Charbonnet stack, maybe with Noah Fant. So that might be. Do you want to pull up the player queue right now?
Because I'm speaking my language, Dave.
Would it be 13, 14 is when we'd be looking for the Geno Fant stack, or is that a little bit further down? Oh, that's
I mean, they're going. But I mean, we're looking at 56, 57. I mean, we'd be looking almost 2 full rounds.
I don't hate it, and we do. I think we can probably wait on that one. We're not going to get that one
unless
we want to
really.
Noah
Fant goes off the board.
Noah Fant and Hunter Henry. Oh,
Oh
my goodness.
gosh.
I mean, there's always Ricky Pearsall. We could
There we go.
keep buying in without the quarterbacks. Just keep buying into that game stack we started this one with. Wow.
Oh man, this is man. I hate to bring you on for a draft like that. We may have to have you on.
It happens, man. I mean, there's a lot of drafts that I do by myself. I share the ones I feel good about, but I have a lot where I'm done and I'm just like, well, that was a waste of $25 in 50 minutes. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. But I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that this is like,
no,
lighting our hair on fire. Absolutely terrible situation so far. So we've already got our let's talk through this. We've already got our 5 quarterbacks or our 5 running backs, and I think we're good. Remind me, we've got who are all I know we've got Brooks, Corum. Oh yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Brooks. All right, so I think we're good. You could just remove running backs from the queue. I think that we're good there.
I agree. Yep. No, golly, Lucas. We'll get there. Okay. Oh boy, where's you leaning here? I mean, do we just kick the can? I mean, we do need a tight end at some point, but man, none of the tight ends are.
Yeah, we're going to do a 3 tight end build. I would go ahead. We said the Panthers. Yeah, there's nobody here that I'm really crazy about. Throw Jermaine Burton in. I mean,
yeah, that's talking my language there.
Scroll down just a little bit, and then I guess maybe we go Geno here. Make sure the bye weeks match up. Geno's got week 10. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the best we can do right here is going with Geno. So we've got, Geno and Charbonnet. Maybe they combine for a handful of passing touchdowns, and then we got the DJ Moore week 17. Yikes!
Hey, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. We'll make something happen out of this. But you're right. At this point, we're looking for nothing against Ken Walker, but if we're hoping Zach Charbonnet has the starting job here end of the season.
I will say, Ryan Grubb. I think there's enough in this offense in Seattle. We talked about it a lot last year that like Zach Charbonnet could take some of the high value touches. I still think that can happen this year. It wasn't the way we expected his rookie season to go, but Zach Charbonnet is a 3-down back that catches passes and can take some goal line work. So he's another guy a lot like Corum. There's multiple outs for him to pay off at ADP. So, I think that there could be some standalone value there for Zach Charbonnet. We want to start looking at some Packers and Vikings players now as well. We've already got the week 17. Let's go ahead and look at the player queue one more time and try to think this through a little bit ahead of time. So Kamani Vidal, we can throw him in the queue. Well, I guess not. We don't want another running back. Rashad Bateman works if we want to, just keep buying into the Ravens offense here. Demarcus Robinson, I believe they play the Rams. The Rams and 49ers play each other, so that one works for us.
I believe,
Troy Franklin, you could throw him in as another guy that plays the Seahawks in the playoffs. Scrolling down a little bit further, you could take quarterbacks out of here as well. I mean, we're just looking at wide receivers and tight ends. We've got 4 picks left, and we're probably doing one more wide receiver and 3 tight ends.
And 3 tight ends. We're just going to throw darts on all the mid tight end 20s.
I throw Isaiah Likely in there. Love Isaiah Likely.
Houston, Baltimore.
Kate Otten also works. We've got
Brooks.
And I think I think the Seahawks also play. No, there was somebody else I saw in week 15 plays Tampa Bay. So we get 2 there. We just need Kate Otten to get hot through the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, then we're
DJ Chark. I mean, we've already got Herbert and haven't really built anything into there. So DJ Chark's probably a guy that we can sit on, wait until that 17-18 turn and add him into there as well. What are the tight ends? Juwan Johnson. I know we talked about the Saints earlier. Well, that was never mind. We don't have anybody that works. That was just in the fun talk about Rashid Shaheed that we were having.
Yeah, right.
And then I guess Hayden Hurst, not a guy that I've drafted a ton, but already drafted. Don't feel crazy about that one, but we need something here. And then if you just want to search Patriots, I think we've pretty much tapped out. I think everybody. Well, Antonio Gibson's still there. Drake May, Javon Baker. Yeah, throw Javon Baker in for the end of the draft as well. So these are the guys that we're looking at. It's not pretty, but this is who we're looking to close this one out with.
My toxic trait is relentlessly drafting Javon Baker solely because I believe in his
Vibes.
dog factor.
Vibes are there.
Dave, like I kid you not, like I have the drop ready every single time I bring up Javon Baker.
Bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up.
Love it.
I was bought in as soon as first interview, and he drops that. Am I supposed to not like the guy afterwards? I mean, I don't want to call him Amon Ra because that's way too aggressive, obviously. But he's one of those guys where it seems like he's the guy who I remember all the wide receivers drafted before me. But anyways, we're
on his shoulder. That's always a good guy to draft.
And again, when we're throwing darts on anybody on the Patriots, he's the last one. He's kind of like our last prayer there for that. But
yeah. So I think with the next pick, I mean, ideally we'd probably want to go Likely and Otten, two guys that work in our current build. We need a tight end, and then that opens us up. We've got a bunch of wide receivers and tight ends that we can look at to close out the draft here.
Yeah. Which again, if we're only targeting one, it's basically a pick our flavor when we get to that 17-18 turn, and we'll see if if anybody takes Hayden Hurst before that final turn. We are in the sweatiest of lobbies, and I don't even think that's a fair statement given how this draft board has fallen.
Isaiah Likely, he's a guy that I've just loved drafting this year.
Yeah.
We saw the upside last year when Mark Andrews went down and he was basically giving us 1-to-1 production, but Todd Monken could just change their base personnel this year. This is a guy like when he was in college, Todd Monken was running two tight end sets all the time in Georgia. And I think that when it comes to a guy like Likely, the cat might just be out of the bag. I don't think that they could just say like, yeah, he was great last year, but we're just going to, let him sit and watch from the bench this year. He can play out of the slot. Andrews can play out of the slot. I think that we're going to see them on the field quite a bit with each other this year. So he's got the contingent upside, of course, but I think he's another guy that, I can kind of sell myself on potentially being a full-time player, even without an injury to Andrews. So I'm sure he's going to go right here with this pick.
Because that's exactly how it's going to go. That's just our luck tonight. I mean, and I hate making the injury case for a player, right? Where it's like, well, if he gets injured, but at the same time, I mean, if we do look at the track record for Mark Andrews, he has one fully healthy season in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not exactly a guy that I would be willing to bet on. I'm willing to bet on him year over year. Don't get me wrong, because he is elite at his position. But when we're looking at an Isaiah Likely, it's pretty easy to make the case here. So you're good double tapping Likely and Otten here.
Yeah, that's who I wanted to fall here. Works out for us. Both of these guys work. It's not the prettiest when you go 3 tight ends, but I think that you can kind of aggregate 3 tight ends that are in good offenses and get kind of back end tight end 1 production at the end of the season here. So let's look one more time at some of the guys that are available, just in case we overlooked anybody. I'd much prefer DJ Chark to Hayden Hurst. So are there any other tight ends a little bit higher up the board that maybe we're interested in? Because man, I really Hayden Hurst is the guy that I've drafted once. I mean,
and I was just saying,
I kind of need it. But also, I mean, this could be one of those situations where, like, yeah, you want the stack. Of course you do. But what if Justin Herbert just spreads the ball out and everybody's getting involved? And, like, having that stack isn't even that important because it could be, a Patrick Mahomes type season from last year where he's throwing for 4,000 plus yards, but there isn't a single receiver going over 1,000. I could totally see that happening. So I'm not gonna force any crazy stacks with Hayden Hurst. I think Colby Parkinson, I prefer him in a vacuum to Hayden Hurst.
I would agree.
So I think the only reason we'd potentially go Hayden Hurst here is if we end up getting sniped on DJ Chark, which, given the way this draft's been going, could very well happen.
Could very well happen. I think Colby is one of those guys too, where it's the Rams went out and made sure they got him this offseason. I mean, they paid him a nice chunk of change to come play for the team. And I'm not always the follow the money guy. I think sometimes that can lead us down, false hope paths. But he's one where, we even heard around draft time. This team was talking about taking Brock Bowers, right? Trading up to try and get Brock Bowers. So clearly, if they're going to go out and pay Colby Parkinson this kind of money at 6'7", 256, 265, I think he is. This dude is massive too. I can't imagine Sean McVay doesn't take advantage of paying the money and making sure he's a part of this Rams offense, which, when they had all their weapons on the field last season, we're talking about Stafford, Kyron, Kupp, and Puka were all top 10 options at their position. I mean, I find it hard to believe that Colby Parkinson doesn't, join the party as well.
And remind me, did we get Demarcus Robinson? I know he was a guy we threw in the queue, but I don't think we got him.
We did not.
We?
No,
Right.
he was taken 2 picks before our last pick, I believe.
Of course he was, yeah.
I mean, he's one where, again, if you listen to his show, like the Underdog Football Show, I've heard Chip Chasing talk about him quite a bit as well. I mean, he's one where people are like, great, happy to take him. I mean, earlier in the offseason, it was 18th, 17th round Demarcus Robinson. Now we're looking at him like 15th, 16th round Demarcus Robinson. So he's one where, you see a wide receiver 78 to wide receiver 75 jump. I mean, that's at this range, that's almost a full round.
And we saw the same thing with Rashad Bateman. Like, I just shared my exposure. I'm halfway through BBM and I shared my exposure, and everyone's asking me, like, how do you have this much Rashad Bateman? Or why are you drafting Rashad Bateman this much? And, I was getting him for free in round 17 and 18 a couple of months ago. And now he's creeped up. Dontavian Wicks is another guy who has moved up to a point that I'm not comfortable taking him. And that's kind of the problem, is all of these guys become everybody's sleeper. And when you're everybody's sleeper, you're not a sleeper.
You're not.
Yeah.
I mean, we had you on our podcast last year, and that was one of the things we talked about, was like, what makes a sleeper a sleeper? Well, if everybody's talking about him, the odds are he's not a sleeper. It works the same in season too. If everybody's saying he's a buy low candidate, nobody is selling him low. So he is no longer a buy low candidate then. So it's funny where once the market over adjusts, you have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, where can we actually get our edges at?
And that was Hollywood Brown for me. Hollywood Brown was a guy that was just an auto pick for me a couple of months ago when he was going in the 6th, 7th round. He was going behind Xavier Worthy at one point, and now he's crept all the way into consistently going in round 4. And I love Hollywood Brown. I see the path to him break out. I wrote a 2,000-word article about him a couple of months ago. He's one of my favorite picks in fantasy, but now going in round 4, it's just a little bit too steep.
Well, and even and not to keep piling on with the Chiefs as well, but I mean, Rashid Rice, we're starting to see him creep up again. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, wide receiver 42, and now all of a sudden, okay, wait, hold on, the suspension keeps getting pushed off, and people are saying, like, people were on this a month ago and they were drafting him as a wide receiver, 42, 43, 44, and now he's steamed up to the wide receiver 37. So
yeah. I got to give a shout out to Drew Davenport.
Yeah.
He's on our staff at Footballguys. He is a lawyer, and he has really found a niche in this industry, kind of looking at potential legal problems and trying to decipher how things will happen. And he was kind of saying, just keep drafting Rashid Rice. And last year he was saying, keep drafting Alvin Kamara. And, a lot of times, we just see something happen, an off the field issue, and our visceral reaction is just like, okay, well, I don't want to draft this guy anymore. But when you start looking at how the process works and the time it takes to go through court and the time it takes for the NFL to react, a lot of times we don't see these suspensions happen until a year or two later. And it looks like that's the way it's trending with Rashid Rice. His first court date isn't even until mid-December. Right. So there's probably not going to be a suspension this year. If anything, it's something we'll be talking about next offseason. But no reason not to be drafting Rashid Rice.
Which, again, now we're going to see those ADPs almost flip entirely, where you're going to start seeing Rashid up in that mid-30s range, and you're probably going to start seeing Hollywood, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is one where I think his ADP is just going to start to plummet.
But we also got some good reports out of camp today. Well, here we go. We got
That's true.
Did somebody else take Hayden Hurst, or did you just remove him from the queue?
Oh, boy. I mean, since they're at the top of the queue, we can't lose.
You have got to be kidding me. Hayden Hurst actually went in this draft in round 17. I mean, I didn't even want him, but that's just like comical. Yeah. So DJ Chark and Colby Parkinson to close this one out.
I didn't even recognize that. I actually thought I took him out of the queue because I'm like, okay, we decided it's Parkinson. And I can do a classic, Hayden Hurst. That is comical.
Yeah.
Where did he go? Early 17.
Yeah. Crazy.
Where? So we're going. Okay. So I see. He did go a little bit New England Chargers week 17 there. I mean,
that was the guy that we were battling with on the complete opposite end of the board. We were trying to get all of the same players, and it just made for one of those days.
Again, part of me is like, at this point in the draft, though, would I rather just take the player I believe in a vacuum over a guy like just for the sake? I know it's not good practice to not stack your quarterbacks. We did get that with DJ Chark, but after a brutal snipe on Goff, I mean, it's There was another idea. Donald Parr.
Yeah, going real deep down there.
Kevin, that was you. I was wondering if that was you, buddy. That was Kevin at the 10th pick there. I appreciate you having a little bit of grace for us there.
Yeah. In hindsight, remind me, who is it that we took over Jared Goff? I'll go back and look at how different this team would have been. I think it was round 10?
So we were debating Purdy at the 9-10, and then we were waiting for Goff in the 11th.
That's right. And Goff. I still think Khalil Shakir and Blake Corum.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I see the upside case for both of those guys. We lost out on the stack, but if I had to do it over again, I'm probably still taking Khalil Shakir and Blake Corum over Jared Goff, because I still think it was the right process. We could have hopefully gotten Jared Goff there, and it didn't work out, of course, but Khalil Shakir worked with the build that we had. Blake Corum worked with the build that we had, and I think that those are guys that could easily smash their ADP, guys that have been drafting aggressively. So, if I had to do it over again, even now, with the benefit of hindsight, of course, yeah, we'd have preferred Jared Goff, but
right.
I'm probably still making that bet if I'm in that same position again.
Again, it's game theory on the draft board, and sure, you take Dak Prescott there, and I'm with you. I was fine trying to push Goff around that point because, again, most of the time, if I'm drafting, not that people in the same draft lobby draft the same as me, but I'm not necessarily looking to a lot of those quarterbacks in after the Brock Purdy range. I'm not too interested in trying to draft unless if I'm going to stack two of them together and just call it quits on the position. But it's not too often you're even put in that scenario. So,
well, what a fun
brutal
Smith, Zach Charbonnet stack and a Justin Herbert, DJ Chark stack.
The two most elite stacks that you could possibly pull in
a
Best Ball Mania 5 contest.
Yeah, you could share this team on Twitter and everybody will just know what happened. Oh, you guys got sniped multiple times, and that's back to what we said at the top of the show. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
We'll do a final recap of the team and we'll send you off here, Dave. As we were just talking about, didn't quite work out. A quarterback, settled for Herbert and Geno. I will say I am more bullish on Geno. We didn't get a chance to talk about him because we were still recovering from that Goff snipe, basically. But we did talk about the Seattle Seahawks offense and Ryan Grubb a little bit.
We got sniped on Lockett too, right? I know we had Lockett queued up at one point.
We had Lockett queued up.
Yeah, because that would have worked. Yeah, of course.
Yep. Hey, at least it was entertaining for the people. That's half of it. Is I want to win, but also part of this is just having a good laugh at the same time. I am bullish on the Seahawks offense. I'm a believer in Geno Smith still. So I'm fine with him at quarterback. I think we would have liked to stack him up a little bit better possibly, but Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, Zach Charbonnet in the running back room. That is definitely the strength of this team.
Wide receivers aren't any schlubs either. We got a pretty strong wide receiver
not at all
here. And we went deep and we went heavy at the wide receiver room. So, that's the way it works out a lot of times. When you're going aggressively, we went almost exclusively running back and wide receiver with our first 10 picks, I want to say, first 9 picks. So when you do that, you got a good strength there, and you just have to hope that the quarterbacks and tight ends fall, which unfortunately today they did not.
Yeah, Isaiah Likely, K-Dot, and Colby Parkinson. How many late round tight end builds with 3 have you done this year? I feels like that's a little bit less popular of a strategy, but maybe that's just because it's so top heavy. How many have you done 3 late this year?
Quite a few. Anytime I miss out on the top 8, if I don't get Evan Ingram's the cutoff point for me. If I don't get one of those top 8 wide receivers, or one of those top 8 tight ends, I'm almost always going 3 tight ends at the end. Yeah.
Which at that point you may as well build up your depth elsewhere, and you're throwing darts on touchdowns then every single week with quite literally anybody in the tight end 13 to Hayden Hurst range, right?
Exactly.
You're hoping for a touchdown in those weeks.
As soon as we get off the stream, I'm firing up a BDM that I'm going to feel a little bit better about. I just need to. I don't know if you do that. Anytime I have a bad draft, I can't just end on a bad draft. I will just keep drafting until I get a team that I feel good about. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 times in a row, but that's what I do. Got to end on a high note.
That is what we call being married to the game. You can't go to bed fighting with your significant other. Got to make sure things are all straightened out there. Can't go to bed angry. Look, Dave's Twitter is linked in the description over on YouTube if you're watching over there. Same for Facebook. Fantasy Football Guys football show, the Footballguys Fantasy Football Show is also linked down there as well. Make sure you go subscribe to Dave. Make sure you subscribe to he and Alfredo Brown show. I mean, it is phenomenal work they do over there for Football Guys. Anything you want to plug here, Dave? I want to make sure the people get access to what you all are doing over there. Because again, we here at the Fantasy Football Fellas, big fans of what you all are doing over there.
No, I appreciate it, but just go ahead and follow me on Twitter if you're watching. At Dave Kluge, you'll see everything that we're doing out there. Just happy to be on here today. We should have gone a little bit better, but I still think this team it could play. It's not the worst team I've drafted this offseason.
Cookies do crumble. I mean, we're just going to end on that. I mean that is the theme of this stream. Cookies do indeed crumble. We'll be back same time. Actually, not same time next week. We're gonna have a little bit later stream next week, 7:30 Central. We're gonna be bringing on some more big guns next week. King of the Deposit Kingdom, Pete Overzet, is gonna be joining us next week. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with Pete, as he's got one of the sharpest best ball minds in the industry as well. I know you had him on earlier this offseason, Dave. So he is a lot of fun to have on. Until then, make sure you subscribe here, turn on those notifications so you know when we go live, when all of our content is posted as well. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, TikTok, and at the Fantasy Football Fellas on YouTube, new podcast channel as well that you all can subscribe to. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with more streams next week. Have a great week, y'all. Deuces.